Victor Perton here from the Centre for Optimism. Welcome to this conversation as the Optimistic Innovators of IDEASPIES join the Innovative Optimists from the Centre for Optimism. Joining us will be Lynn Wood, founder of IDEASPIES, Glenn Barnes, the head of governance at IDEASPIES. I'm yours truly, Victor Perton, and Jeff Kerr-Bell will join us for some insights on strategy.
Hi, it's Victor Perton here at the Centre for Optimism, and I am so excited. Today we're talking to our partner organisation, IDEASPIES, and as we've talked about on Twitter and LinkedIn in promoting this event, it's the Optimistic Innovators at IDEASPIES talking to the Innovative Optimists at the Centre for Optimism. So I'd like to welcome the founder of IDEASPIES, Lynn Wood. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Victor, and thank you very much for having us here.
Oh, it's a delight. It's a delight. And Glenn Barnes, who is the guru of all things governance and government on IDEASPIES. Welcome, Glenn.
Good evening, Victor. Great to be with you.
Lynn, we've partnered up with IDEASPIES. I just love what you do. I think I look at your website every day, IDEASPIES, and it's one word with a .com. If you want to go and have a look at it now, you're welcome, but keep your eyes on the three of us. Lynn, tell us, what started IDEASPIES and what are you hoping to achieve?
Well, I travel a lot and I always look around to see clever ideas, what's happening around the world. And I was with a friend in Vancouver and we were on a ferry going over to Vancouver Island, and the guide said, promote what you love rather than bash what you hate. And well, it was such a terrific statement because we're all surrounded by negative news all the time. And we thought that there should be a platform which would showcase the clever ideas happening around the world that would give us confidence, give everybody confidence in the future. And so we thought we could do it. We thought that we needed a name for it and had to have idea in it. We thought of a few different names, and then we came up with IDEASPIES, and we're very surprised we could get it on .com. So we started it, and it's been rolling ahead ever since.
Well, it's fantastic. It's just so many good ideas. So what I always do in these conversations is the opening question, Lynn. What makes you optimistic?
Well, that's very easy. It's actually seeing all the wonderful ideas around the world and realizing that they solve a lot of the problems that are shown in the media that are worrying us, concerning us. There are so many things happening that it makes me very optimistic about the future, and I'm hoping that through IDEASPIES I can make people more optimistic, and it's where having that relationship and partnership with the Centre for Optimism is perfect. And having Glenn as well, who's the guru for governance associated, because governance has become a very hot topic in the last few months as well. And we have ideas, Glenn has ideas that will improve governance throughout the country.
So Glenn, what makes you optimistic?
Victor, I guess I became optimistic as a review of just life experiences. Like most people, I've had dark spots in my life when I've had downtimes, and a sense of optimism and resilience has really brought me through those dark spots. It's also helped me stretch myself in terms of the up times to always do better. And so practical experience is what has led me to an optimistic posture.
We've been writing a press release today. We did a survey of 600 people from 26 countries last month. And the key word in the word cloud is life experience. What you just said and what people answered just verifies the science that in fact peak optimism comes later in life when you can put the ordinary anxieties of life into context. Now, So Lynn, I've seen that you're now getting IDEASPIES into schools, at universities. You look like you're even going to open displays in museums. Tell me, what are the key developments in IDEASPIES, and what are the new thinking and technology breakthroughs you're reaching in sharing innovation with the world?
Well, we've been focusing in the past year on upgrading the platform. It's actually more than a website, it's a platform because it's interactive. And now it's at a stage where it's very easy to use, it's very presentable, and it's very quick. So we're now focusing on getting it used, making people aware of it and getting it used. So for example, the Association for Independent Schools in New South Wales is recommending it. Just very recently, a teacher from a school in design and technology has come to us to start using it at his school because it's perfect for design and technology, where the students are looking for stimulating ideas for their project. And in the end, when they finish their project, they'll be looking at how to publicize it. So IDEASPIES is a perfect forum for that. Now, in addition to that, we're looking at universities, and we have organised for University of New South Wales students to give us advice as to how we can make more people aware of it in universities so it can be used to search ideas. There's lots and lots of projects being done. You don't need to reinvent. If you Google anything related to those projects, like for example, plastics, there are lots of plastics ideas that would solve the plastic problem. And all those ideas are explained very simply. So just making students aware of the fact that they can use it and getting to the right people to give them that message is what we're focusing on at the moment.
Well, I love the way you can just tweet each of the messages. You've actually set that up really well. So those of you who are watching online and later, if you go to ideaspies.com, any of the ideas you like, it's just so easy to click Twitter, the LinkedIn link, and it actually throws up some text that just allows you to modify it slightly. So I think you've done that brilliantly, Lynn.
Well, thank you. It's been a lot of hard work, because it's like creating something like Facebook, but only for positive ideas, no negative ideas, no negative information on there. And they can be searched, very easily searched, and all easily explained.
So some of the research at the Centre for Optimism and global research out of Canada, the US, Germany, says that optimism is the underpinning of innovation. With innovation, you need to be prepared to try and try again, knowing that failure is part of the pathway to success, and obviously it's an underpinning of entrepreneurship. So we believe very strongly that it's optimists are better innovators. It's hard for a pessimist to innovate. Glenn and Lynn, do you want to give us your take on the connection between optimism and innovation?
I don't think you can innovate unless you're an optimist. It's just impossible, because in innovating, you're trying to improve whatever you're dealing with. And if you're trying to improve something, make it better, you have to see how it could be better. And as you said, Victor, you have to be able to rebut a lot of the objections, because people who can't see what you see are going to say it's been done before, it can't be done, and you've really got to get over all of that. So to do that, you have to be an optimist. And
Glenn, you've been in business, you've tried all sorts of things, you've been in very innovative companies.
Victor, I believe optimism is the font from which innovation flows, and that sort of sounds a bit sort of slogan-y, but I've been a marketing man for many years, and maybe slogans are what to look at. But I started my first role in a manufacturing company where we were launching 48 to 52 new products and variations a year. And you had to be optimistic that each year you could come up with new bright ideas that were appealing to the market. And we had a ball. And that's really the way I've addressed every issue I've had to confront throughout my life from then on. And I find having an optimistic and positive mindset allows you to come up with great ideas time and time again. Not all of them work, but you always come up with new ideas and ways forward and derive energy from it.
I shared your quote, Glenn, you know, that optimism is the font of innovation. And Father Bob, you know, the famous Melbourne priest, retweeted it today to his tens of thousands of followers. So
bless him.
It was a very evocative message. So, Glenn, you know, you're working on governance issues and government, and as well as working with IDEASPIES, you're looking at new democracy and a whole range of new ways to improve Australian democracy. You know, the Westminster system is an ancient system, and I think it's creaking under the weight of 24/7 scrutiny. So tell us, you know, what's your mission and passion for changing the style of government and governance, both through IDEASPIES and on your other platforms?
Well, I guess for many, many decades as a senior corporate manager and then as a company director, I've always had a great interest and passion for what good governance is all about. I've also been a concerned citizen in terms of how our government processes might work, and became very worried as I saw the decline in trust in liberal democracies, and ours in particular in Australia. And I guess like most people, at first I got a bit angry at the politicians and said, why don't they do a better job? You know, we're putting them in these positions of trust. Why are they failing us? And it was only when I really looked into the system, I realized that, as you said, you know, our system of liberal democracy was developed in the mid 1800s to its final form and hasn't really changed much since then. Yet just about everything else in society has changed. You know, and a couple of facts. I mean, when it was developed, about 90% of people didn't have access to good education. Now over 90% of people have access to good education. People didn't have news flows. Now we have a surplus of news flows. People didn't have time to have opinions. We've now got a lot of leisure time to develop opinions. So it's no wonder there's been a bit of a lack of trust develop in our system. But when you actually look at the system and you look at it from an optimistic point of view, there aren't that many things you have to change to actually get people re-engaged with our democracy and our system. And I guess what I'm doing is working with many groups of people who have a similar view to actually bring the message through to people in Australia that our system isn't broken, it just needs some process change. And I believe once we embrace that, and in particular our politicians embrace it, we will have a better society with a far more participatory democracy, and we'll all move forward.
So what's the key change you'd recommend? What's the first step on this pathway?
I've got a series of points of view, but I do think we have to have an engaging community-wide discussion on the many ideas people have on how we can take our democracy forward. In terms of simple things, just going back to the old green and white paper process, where instead of politicians bringing their thought bubbles straight into legislation, we have a thoughtful community-wide discussion on the options in terms of how to address a particular policy issue. That then goes into a white paper that gives a rationale as to why we're going forward in the way we're going forward. And then that's taken forward into legislation. You know, at the end of the day, we've got to find common good solutions that the majority can live with, which is the basis of a civilized society and a liberal democracy, which is just something we seem to have lost sight of late.
Facebook. So, Glenn, what are the most interesting ideas that other citizens have contributed that you've moderated in recent weeks?
Well, the sort of a group I've been working with for a number of years, the New Democracy Foundation, has been using citizens' juries to take the wicked issues that are very complex and that politicians don't like to address because they're too easily attacked by the opposition. whereby you have a very transparent public discussion amongst a weighted set of people who are selected from the broader community to review those issues. And good examples of how they've worked is in New Zealand, when they were addressing the issue of their taxation system and their social safety net, something we need to address in Australia. They actually used Victoria University in Wellington to advocate the various points of view to the public. And then when there was about a 60% agreement, the government took it in and legislated it. The biggest issue I've seen was the removal of the anti-abortion clause from the Irish constitution, which was seen as close to politically impossible as anything anybody could ever address. Citizens' juries met for 5 months. They heard from the churches, from the medical profession, and when the thing went to a vote in Parliament, it got an 80% positive vote. So you can take difficult issues, you can educate the population by having a broad range of discussion, not a dictation from those upon high to the populace. You can handle these difficult issues and handle them very well indeed. So there are a couple of examples. One of the issues I'm very keen on, I would like to see a constitutional council put in place in Australia to both be the protectors of the Constitution, but the people who advocate changes that bring our Constitution, which is creaking and has a lot of contradictions in terms of common practice, bring it up to a modern document that we can all live with and reflects the sort of governance we want in our country. This, can I just say, I co-chair with Verity Firth a group called Citizens for Democratic Renewal, and anybody that's got further interest in this issue, they can go to democraticrenewal.com and see quite a detailed analysis of the challenges structurally in our system and potential ways of moving it forward.
Is there a website, or how do people find it?
It's a website. If they go to democraticrenewal.com.au, they'll find a website that takes them to a document that details an analysis of the system and potential solutions for consideration.
Now, we've got some questions from the audience, and Jeff Kerr-Bell has an interesting question. He's a strategist. He's worked in the banks. Jeff, are you online voice-wise?
I absolutely am.
So what's your question to Lynn and Glenn?
I've been part of the Centre for Optimism for a while, and if you follow all the discussion, and particularly around strategy, optimists would certainly assert that optimism underpins good strategy. And so, Lynn and Glenn, my question for you is, can you share your thoughts on the relationship between optimism and strategy, and how you think companies can, I guess, make a difference to their strategy and strategy execution with optimism?
I actually think optimism is essential for good strategy, because strategy is about growing a business or an organization. And how can you grow, make something better unless you're an optimist? I was giving a talk recently on the risks of not innovating. And just in preparing for that, I remembered, because I also have a marketing background, as does Glenn, and I remembered what Peter Drucker had said. He was recognised as one of the founders of management consulting, and he said many years ago, or actually in 1954, that the two most important functions in a business are marketing and innovation. And with both of those functions, you need to be optimistic to be successful. You need those characteristics to be able to grow a business. So I'm very, very strong on that point. Could I also mention, just relating to what Glenn was talking about, he first mentioned the green and white paper. If you just search green and white on IDEASPIES, up the top there, with when you've got the signal for search, you will find that idea explained very simply with a link. it's a very important paper, as are all of Glenn's papers.
The other thing, of course, where optimism is needed is sales. My friend Sue Barrett's very strong on optimistic salespeople, and Martin Seligman, the guru of positive psychology, I think his first big commercial contract was one of the big American insurance companies, where they actually found that the optimistic salespeople outsold the pessimists by a ratio of something like 4 or 5 to 1. It was quite an astonishing difference. But Glenn, do you have an answer to Jeff's question on the connection between optimism and strategy?
Probably a very simplistic answer, being a simple person. To me, strategy is all about how you achieve your objectives. And good objectives, to me, have a stretch within them that will take innovation, drive, and a modicum of luck to achieve. And that all requires an optimistic mindset.
Yeah, I'm amazed, Jeff. I think you've probably seen it too, haven't you? The number of corporations who get scenarios painted for the corporation that are all negative. And I recently sat in on a strategy session where one of the big four had presented 4 scenarios for the company, and they were all negative. You know, it was climate change and selfish people and individualism, and each of them could have been rephrased as, you know, personal empowerment, or, you know, the world coming to grips with climate change, but they did it in the negative. Jeff, have you seen some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with the bias to risk aversion and all the discussion, particularly around governance and leadership of late, that mindset of let's avoid the negative inevitably focuses on actually moving towards the negative and highlighting the negative rather than the flip side. There's a great book called Winning Ugly, actually, by the coach that turned around Andre Agassi's career. And it's a similar sort of technique that you use with children, which is you focus on what you want them to do, on the positive, not on the negative. Your brain takes you to the negative if you continually reinforce that. So, yeah, I think absolutely seeing that in strategy in large organizations, and my old friends, one of the big four as well, to an extent.
And that's a very important point, Jeff. If you don't think you can do something, you won't be able to do it. Your thoughts are so important. And Seligman was very, very good at pointing that out, even saying that you can learn optimism. You don't have to be born with it. You can learn it. And he, I've read his paper, has very good techniques for learning optimism. It's beneficial. So why wouldn't you want to learn something that's beneficial?
Well, as Jeff knows, you know, the Centre for Optimism, our original work was all around the why of optimism. But I made a speech in New Zealand at the International Entrepreneurs, and they said, look, Vic, you convinced us in the first 5 minutes, just do more on the how. And I think that's the wonderful shared mission of you, Lynn and Glenn, and you do it too, Jeff, but helping people. We say that people are in a fog of pessimism and cynicism, and they need beacons like you too, and what you're doing with IDEASPIES. Back to sort of almost a personal question for both of you, Lynn and Glenn. We believe that the times call for realistic and infectiously optimistic leaders. Who are the leaders who've inspired you generally and in your work, Lynn?
Again, that's an easy question for me. The person that I admire greatly is David Sodi, AO. He has been supporting IDEASPIES since pretty much the beginning and recommending that organisations look at it. And he's such an influential person, has so much on his plate. He's been advising federal and state government recently. I'm really very, very pleased recently when he agreed to join our advisory board. And we have our first meeting coming up pretty soon. So yes, he's been terrific, and also being currently the chair of the CSIRO, very connected into innovation and optimism.
Yeah, no, fantastic leader. And Glenn, in your life, who've been the infectiously optimistic leaders who've inspired you?
I guess firstly, a headmaster at my school, Reverend Stanley Curl, who was a great educator, who had great confidence that it was an all-boys school. Every boy had a great future ahead if he could only find the thing that ignited their passion. And he helped me through some very difficult periods I had as a youngster and set me on a path to leadership. Then there was a gentleman named John Gates, who was a managing director when I worked with Unilever at Streets Ice Cream, who gave me some fantastic breaks and really stretched me beyond what I thought I could do. John Mars was another person who really gave me great opportunity, as were Nobby Clark and Don Argus at the bank. In terms of deep motivators, though, and people who I think have been optimistic through really tough times, I mean, Winston Churchill, Sir John Monash, John Kennedy, and even Bob Hawke in his own way, I found quite inspiring as optimistic individuals.
A deep, rich history. Well, look, we've reached the half-hour mark. And look, on behalf of our audience, on behalf of the Centre for Optimism, Lynn, Glenn, thank you so much. To our audience, both on Zoom, on Facebook, on YouTube Live, thank you for joining us. Remember, the website is IDEASPIES.com. Absolutely brilliant. You could join up, share your ideas, and learn so much about the rest of the world. Lynn, some last words. Glenn, some last words.
Well, I hope there are many idea spies in the audience. And if you're not an idea spy now, please become one, because they're all very positive people who want to make the world better and who are observant, looking around at the ideas that will do that. So thank you very much appreciated being part of this session. Thanks, Victor.
Thank you very much, and it's good night to our audience, and it's a thank you to our panelists.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you all.
Well, thank you, and remember, you can join IDEASPIES.com for free. The website is on the screen, and so too, come and look at the Centre for Optimism, and if you send me a note and mention this program, you'll be able to get a free subscription to that service, or you can sign up as a member.